Hey everybody, Crow back again with another Evercade video. This time we're going to be looking at the Megacat Studio Collection 2. It's a collection of 8 games from indie developers, all games that have been released fairly recently. In fact, one of the games here hasn't even been released yet. And you may be wondering, well, how in the world does that work? How is there an unreleased game on this cartridge? A game that's still being worked on actively. And I'll get to that one when I talk about it. But also wanted to mention that this is the first cartridge I got with a game on it that didn't work, and I had to exchange the cartridge for another one. So if you do have this collection and you haven't played all the games yet, I highly recommend booting each one up to the point where you actually can play it, just to verify that everything on your cartridge is A-OK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about each of these 8 games for a few minutes, talk about the story and what I thought of the game, and then I'm going to rank it on a scale from 1 to 5, a 5 being what I feel to be a great game, a game that I really liked and saw very little flaws with, a 4 being a good game, a game that I liked but still I thought could use some improvements maybe. A 3 is what I feel to be a okay game, it's a game I neither liked nor disliked. A 2 is what I consider to be a poor game, a game that I didn't like, but I may want to go back and revisit it in the future. There's something about it that I maybe did kind of like. And then a 1 is what I feel to be a bad game. It's a game I didn't like at all, and I don't even know why they would put it on an Evercade cartridge. And as usual, these are my own personal opinions. You may like a game that I don't. Your mileage may vary. And also, after I talked about each game, I'm going to rank them all from my least favorite to my favorite. So let's get started with our first game. The first game in this collection is Alter Ego Dreamwalker, a game developed in 2020 by Retro Souls for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. I believe this game is also available for Windows and Linux. The story of this game, according to the Megacat Studios website, is that you are Zool, not the ninja from the Nth Dimension or the one looking for the Keymaster. This is a completely different Zool, apparently. And you are trying to escape an interdimensional prison. And that pretty much sums it all up. The game doesn't really need a story, and I'm surprised I even found one. This is an action puzzle game where you move your character around the levels, avoiding the monsters, and collecting all the bouncing square things in the level. One of the game descriptions I read called them jumping pixels, so I'll just go with that. Collect them all and you'll instantly move on to the next level. The gimmick of this game is that the whole time you're running around the level, your phantom twin is also moving around the screen as a mirror image. Most of the time the phantom is mirrored horizontally, but in some levels he's mirrored vertically. At any time you can hit a button and swap places with your phantom, which is handy for accessing areas or avoiding monsters. Not only that, but the pixels you are collecting come in 3 color variations. The red ones can only be collected by your character, and the white ones can only be collected by your phantom. There are green pixels as well that can only be collected by your character during the swap process. The game keeps the controls simple, and only one button is used, and that's to swap places with your phantom, and I think it plays pretty good. The game soundtrack is also good and changes every few levels, so you don't get sick of constantly hearing the same song. It's a really fun action puzzle game, but I feel it's way too short. The game has 30 levels, but they can be completed really quickly. So far, out of every game I've played on the Evercade, I finished this one the quickest by far. The total time I spent capturing footage was 27 minutes. That's right, on average each level took me less than a minute to complete, and that includes all my deaths and restarting levels and everything. I think the longest any one level took me was 2.5 minutes. Now there's nothing wrong with games with short levels. I mean, it makes the game feel like it's progressing at a brisk pace. But if most of the game's levels can be completed in under a minute, I feel like there should be about 100 levels in the game. As it is, I'm going to give this game a 4 because I really do like this game and I really think it's a great game. It's just really short on levels. And since there's no scoring in the game whatsoever, the only point in going back is if you want to speedrun this game. Game 2 is Arkagis Revolution, a game developed for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive in 2020 by Psych. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's spelled S-I-K. The Evercade manual says it's developed by Broke Studios, but that's just not the case. Broke Studios is just selling the physical version of the game in Europe, just as MegaCat Studios is selling the physical version in the US. The developer is Psych, S-I-K, whatever. The game's story is that there's a colony on Mars named Arkagis that was under a dictatorship for decades. The United Space Colony sent an army led by Commander Victor to bring down the dictator. However, when he did, he acted as the new de facto leader instead. A group of rebels led by Commander Gennari now plan on removing Commander Victor from power so they can finally free their colony. They will attempt to do this with the aid of a new secret ship that they've been developing. This is a top-down shooter that may look like a Super Nintendo game at first glance due to the Mode 7 type effects on display here. You're basically flying a ship around maze-like areas, all while working your way throughout the levels. You can rotate your ship left and right, and this is what causes the whole Mode 7 type effect to occur. You'll be able to pick up 3 different weapons throughout the game, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. The phaser is the basic weapon and is the only one that can be upgraded, although only one time. The homing weapon will home in on enemies, but it can get confused and lock onto obstacles like sparks that cannot be destroyed. And the blast weapon is so powerful that it can blast through doors. However, it has a major kickback and reload time. There are a few basic enemies you'll encounter throughout the game, and every once in a while there's a boss to defeat. I thought the bosses were pretty fun to fight because as they weaken, they'll start to lose control, causing erratic flight paths and bullet patterns for you to dodge. Regarding the Mode 7 type effects here though, they are accomplished in a totally different manner than they would have been on the Super Nintendo. This game is accomplishing the rotating effects by actually rotating all the sprites on the screen. However, the Genesis hardware does have a finite sprite limit, but this is helped by the game presenting itself in a faux tate mode, meaning that the sides of the screen only contain HUD elements, thus letting the game only worry about the sprites that would appear in just a little bit over half the screen. The rotating effects aren't the only surprise though, as there's quite a lot of speech in this game as well. There are 5 characters that are voiced by 2 people, and there's usually some sort of conversation that happens before and or after each level.
This is Lynn. I'm at the destination, awaiting response.
The game is pretty short, but it's also a lot of fun, and a lot of care and detail went into the game's options. You can change the game's HUD to something simpler, you can add an on-screen timer for speedrun purposes, and there are several different difficulty levels to choose from. Best of all, you can map the buttons however you want on the Evercade, meaning that to rotate left and right, you can just map those to the left and right shoulder buttons, and this made the game way more fun to play. What's weird though is I found that save states were unusable with the buttons mapped this way, because when you load a save state, the shoulder buttons just no longer work, making it unable for you to rotate your ship. It's kind of a weird glitch that hopefully gets ironed out in the future. But I found I really didn't need save states anyway, as there are unlimited continues. Design-wise, I did think it was strange that you lost all your weapon upgrades in between each level, but the game will make sure you have all the weapons you need in the way that it's designed. As a trade-off, I do like how each level starts you off with maximum health. This is a fantastic game, and I'll easily give it a 5 despite its short length. The third game in the collection is Devwill Too, a game developed by Manganga Team in 2020 for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. I'd love to tell you what the game's story is, but I don't know if I exactly understand what's going on story-wise. The game is primarily told through comic book style panels, and I kinda get what's going on, but I'm not sure I'm grasping the full story. I looked up the game on MegaCat's website, and all I could gather is that one of the game's main features is an existentialist narrative. Well, I'm not a philosophy major, so I found an original game manual and translated it from Portuguese to find out that you play as a newly hatched homunculus that goes out to discover his origins. But you know what? This is a platformer, so the story is just background dressing for the actual game, and it certainly isn't bad at all. Much like a Mario game, your homunculus can damage or defeat most enemies by jumping on top of them. However, your creature also has a slide attack that also can be implemented. The interesting thing is that when you slide into an enemy character, your creature will pop up into the air automatically as if he's just jumped. This could be to your disadvantage if you aren't paying attention, leading you to come into contact with another enemy or projectile. But if you're paying attention, you can use this slide attack to begin a combo of leaping from enemy to enemy, which I thought was a pretty cool and satisfying maneuver, which will have you looking for those opportunities often. The game was designed with this feature in mind, as it will reward you more points the more enemies you can dispatch without touching the ground. There's not much more to this game though. There are a handful of enemy types, and there's a few bosses throughout the game, and I did enjoy fighting those bosses. When I first started playing, the jumping physics were just a bit different than what I was expecting, but it was still easy enough to adapt to. I can't complain about the controls at all. The music is very good and helps contribute to the atmosphere of the game. I wanted to give this game a 5, but after thinking about it, I really can't. There's something missing. I would have liked to have maybe seen some more enemy types and certainly more boss fights. But more than that, the game's levels start to repeat at one point during the game, with just slightly more difficult enemy placement, and I thought that was just a bit disappointing to see. Regardless, the play mechanic of slide attacking and then immediately jumping is something I really hadn't seen before, and I really enjoyed the way it worked in the game. I think I wanted to give the game a 5 just for that, but taking the whole game into consideration, I think I'll have to give it a 4. Gluf is the 4th game in the collection, and it was developed by RetroSouls in 2020 for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. And I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation of the game, but that's what I'm gonna go with. So there really is no story to Gluf, other than you are a Tesla frog named Gluf that can gather power from generators and use its energy to power up the platforms. And then, as the game description on RetroSoul's own website puts it, because, well, why not? The gimmick in this game is an interesting twist on a game like City Connection, where you have to highlight all the spots in the level by touching them. But here you can only do it when you're charged up. To charge up, all you gotta do is stand on a generator and your meter will fill up 1 block at a time, up to 10 blocks of power. And then you can transfer 1 block of power to every non-powered block you walk over, thus powering it. You can top off your charge anytime you want, but there are other creatures wandering around the levels. So you may need to pay attention to them, especially while you're charging, since you're somewhat of a sitting duck the longer you need to charge up. But to be clear, you aren't stuck waiting. You can jump on or off anytime you want. Once all the blocks are powered up, the exit will become active, and simply getting to it will move you on to the next level. This is another fun action puzzler that makes the controls even simpler than they were in Alter Ego, in that you just have to move around. You don't use any buttons at any time to perform any action, other than if you want to reset the level. There's great colorful graphics and a good bouncy soundtrack that plays as you power up those platforms. I've got only 2 complaints with this game though. The screens will scroll vertically, meaning that in most levels you won't be able to see the whole level at once. This is a problem in a couple ways. Firstly, the ladders in the game don't work like normal ladders. They're more like supersonic escalators that shoot you up or down super fast. Sometimes there may be a monster just off screen that you don't see, and when you shoot up and down some of the longer ladders, you'll shoot right into a creature you didn't know was there. Also, when you fall off the bottom of a level, you'll just reappear at the top, falling until you land on a platform. But you won't be able to see what's up there before you make the leap, and you just wind up hoping there's no creatures where you land. The second complaint is that the game is too short. Like Alter Ego, there's only 30 levels, but these did take me twice as long to complete. So that means I played through the entire game in about 60 minutes. I really think there should be more levels in games like this. Regardless, I did like the game and I'm giving it a 4. But even if it did have more levels, I'd still give it a 4 just because you oftentimes bump into creatures you couldn't see until it was too late. Alright, we're halfway through our game list, so if you're liking this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Thanks. The 5th game in this collection is Misplaced. Yeah, that's right, I can't find it. I've looked everywhere and I've checked all the closets, I've looked under the couch cushions, I just can't find it. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. The name of the game is Misplaced, and it was developed by RetroSouls in 2019 for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. In the game, you play as Hera, a character who lives on an island floating in the clouds. He complains that the same thing happens every day and starts to look for a way to escape his current existence, while his friends Hatter and Pirate help him with advice. This is primarily a puzzle game where there are crystals that are all over the screen and your job is to collect them and put them on pedestals, and once you touch the key, you get transported to the next screen or level, if you will. But things only get more difficult from there. As mentioned, you could talk to your friends that are sometimes in the levels, Hatter and Pirate, and they will give you clues as to what you need to do sometimes. But later on in the game, ghosts will start appearing, and touching a ghost will cause the level to instantly reset. Soon enough, you'll be encountering crystals that you can't immediately get to, as they'll be floating on an island separate from the one you're on or blocked off in some other manner, and you can't jump, but you do have a pair of magic glasses, which are the source of this game's main gimmick. The glasses have the ability to record your movements and play them back. Pressing the record button will map out the path you take, and pressing play will make your character play back your movements, even if it's in midair. The game won't let you play a recording if you're going to be in midair when it ends, so it's very much impossible to fall off the island. As the game progresses, using the magic glasses becomes harder, as you won't be able to use them unless you're holding a crystal. And since you can only hold one crystal at a time, you have to plan out when to pick them and when to put them down as well. I really enjoyed this brain teaser of a game, but the biggest issue I have with it is that it's way too short. I beat the whole thing in less than an hour. The game only has 25 levels, and I think it should have been at least twice that. What I find strange is that sometimes the game introduces a new gimmick, but then it never uses it again. The whole hidden platform thing that I'd mentioned earlier, that only happened in one level if I'm remembering correctly. There was another level where there were way too many pedestals for the number of crystals that were on screen, and if you talk to one of the characters, he just kind of tells you gibberish. But once you decipher that gibberish, it basically tells you which pedestals are the correct ones to put those crystals in. And I thought that was a pretty cool concept for a level, but it only happens once in the game. Another interesting level has the ground disappearing from under your feet as you walk on it, and I thought that was a pretty interesting concept to bring to the table, but nope, it only happens in just that one level. I did like the game though. The graphics have a simple, nice, colorful, blocky look to them, and the music is nice and relaxing to listen to as you play. The controls for recording and playing takes a little bit of time to get used to, but I thought it was a pretty cool gimmick for the game overall. I'm going to give this game a 4 and say it's good, but I would have given it a 5 if it had more levels. Game 6 is Romeow and Julicat, a game released for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive in 2020, developed by Megacat Studios themselves. The whole plot of the game is that you need to help Romeow serenade Julicat by using puzzle pieces. The puzzle board is 8x8 blocks in dimension, and you'll start out with a selection of 3 puzzle pieces to choose from. You'll choose one of the puzzle pieces and find an open spot on the board to place it. You can't rotate it, you just have to take it the way it is and put it on the game board. Once you've put the first piece down, you'll have to choose from the remaining 2 pieces the second piece to put on the board. Once the second piece is put on the board, you'll have to select the last one remaining, and once you put that third piece onto the board, the game will randomly give you 3 more pieces to choose from, and the game repeats from there. On the puzzle board, when a complete line is filled in either vertically or horizontally, that line will disappear, freeing up those spots to give you more room to place more puzzle pieces. The game will end if you cannot place any puzzle pieces available to you on the game board. If you have a bomb available, you can use it to remove all pieces from the board at any time you want, but bombs will automatically activate anyway if you run out of space to place a puzzle piece, so I never really worry about using them. The core concept of the game is pretty fun, and there are a few game modes to choose from, including an arcade mode that doesn't end until you run out of space, and there's a couple of 2-player modes, but I'd like to focus on the classic mode, which is the main game mode that sees Romeow wooing Julicat. I want to complain about the story here because I found it a bit irritating. I know it really doesn't have anything to do with the actual gameplay, but there's certain things that nagged at me in the back of my mind as I played. The game progresses from level to level when you've used a set number of game pieces. When you start, Julicat tells you have to use 50 puzzle pieces, so I'm like, okay, no problem. I did it, and Romeow serenades Julicat, and they are happy. On the very next screen, Julicat tells me 100 puzzle pieces, and I'm like, what? Wasn't 50 good enough for you? Now you want 100? Okay, fine. And then you spend twice as much time on the next stage to get through 100 pieces. Okay, now we're 10 minutes into the game and I've completed the first 2 levels. On the next screen, Julicat tells me 200 puzzle pieces. Okay, this is starting to get ridiculous. Make up your mind already. How many damn puzzle pieces do you want? Another 10 minutes go by just to complete level 3. Then, Julicat has the goddamn nerve to ask for 400 goddamn puzzle pieces. At this point, I'm asking myself, why is Romeow so interested in her? He's been doing everything she asks and gets nothing in return except for more demands. Romeow, you need to leave her. This is not a healthy relationship. You can do better. Oh yeah, it's just a game. Anyway, my point is that the levels just start getting way too long. Level 4 takes around 20 minutes alone to complete. Fortunately, level 5 is back down to 250 pieces, but with the added gimmick that there are more puzzle piece types introduced into the mix. But then level 6 is back up to 400 pieces, and another puzzle piece type has been added in. And guess what? That's the end of the game. Those 6 levels take about 60 to 90 minutes to complete, and that's only if you don't mess up and have to restart at any time. I like this game, but the biggest problem is with the pacing of the game's classic mode. Levels should not be taking 20 minutes to complete. I'm thinking that there should have been more levels with requirements that don't take so long. Also, I'm not sure if it's just me, but the music tracks just don't sound quite right to me. Almost like the game was struggling to play them, or maybe it's just that they're a bit distorted. Well, that could be turned off if need be. I'm gonna give this one a 4. I think it's a great concept that needs a bit of reworking on the regular game mode. And oh yeah, the name of the game is obviously a spin on Romeo and Juliet, but these two cat versions don't act like the couple they're based on. As far as I know, they aren't from warring families and their love isn't forbidden. It's just that Julicat keeps making demands of Romeow and he just does whatever she says. They don't even wind up dead at the end of the game. If you're gonna take inspiration from Romeo and Juliet, at least commit to the material. The 7th game is Roniu's Tale, developed by Kunji Studios and will be released in 2021 for the NES and Nintendo Switch. That's right, this game will be released in 2021. As of the recording of this video, it isn't really officially out yet. It was funded on Kickstarter with a delivery date of December 2021. But wait, you might ask, if the game isn't out yet, how can it be included in this collection? On a cartridge, no less. Well, that's the subject of a bit of controversy, because only a portion of the completed game is on this Evercade cartridge. When the game is finished, supposedly Blaze will be able to patch the cartridge itself with the complete version of the game. The main problem with all this is that Blaze never really told anyone about this plan, and people only found out once they had the Megacat Studios Collection 2 in their hands, opened it up, and had a little piece of paper fall out informing of this fact. For the purposes of this video though, I'm going to talk about and rate the game as if it's complete. I'll explain why afterwards. In the game, Roniu gets himself trapped in a dungeon and meets a ghost who got trapped and died in the dungeon long ago. The ghost wants to escape, but cannot. So Roniu's quest is to use his newfound abilities to escape the dungeon with the ghost. Apparently this can be done by grabbing the gems that can be found in some of the levels and simply wishing to get out. On each screen, there is a key that must be collected to unlock the door to escape the level. But you know it's not going to be easy, and there's plenty of creatures that must be avoided. To complicate things, every time Roniu moves, the tile he was standing on will disappear, meaning that he can't backtrack and his path needs to be planned out carefully. Fortunately, Roniu will gain powers that will help him throughout the game. These powers are usually limited to only being used once per level. The first power Roniu gets is 3 fireballs. It's the only ability he actually has more than one of. The fireballs can destroy some of the walls or eliminate some of the monsters roaming the levels. The second ability he gains are the levitating shoes that allow him to float over one tile. Then he'll get the ghost ability, which will let Roniu phase through one tile of a solid object. And then lastly, he gets the ability to create one tile in the direction of his choosing. The game does feel like an absolutely solid NES game. The graphics are excellent and the sound and music are fantastic, and I have absolutely no complaints about the control or the difficulty of the game. The worst thing I could say about the game is that the boss fight I encountered seemed a little out of place, but it was interesting nonetheless. Now, even though I was playing an incomplete version of the game, I've got no hesitation giving it a 5 and saying it's great. This is partly because the unfinished game already has more content than some of the other games I've played on the Evercade, and it actually feels like it's nearly complete. The website says there will be 43 levels, and I think it said something like 3 bosses. Well, I counted, and there's already 38 levels in this unfinished version of the game, and that doesn't even include the one boss fight that's in the game. So I think we're missing like only a handful of levels and 2 more bosses. And oh yeah, this version of the game actually doesn't have an ending either. I think it's a little odd that, other than the little slip of paper that came in the game case, there's no indication that this is an incomplete game. There's nothing in the manual, nothing on the menu screen, and nothing in even the game itself. You'd think the title screen would have a little note saying something like unfinished version or version 0.8 or something like that, but it just doesn't. Well, hopefully the game does get finished in the near future, and in a month or 2, we can update our Evercades and get the full version of the game, and all the new copies of this collection will go out with the full game. But I don't think that Blaze should have included any game unfinished without letting anybody know ahead of time before they purchase the collection. The 8th and final game in this collection is Yazzie, developed by RetroSouls in 2020 for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. Yazzie is also available for the MSX and ZX Spectrum. There isn't much of a story to this game. You're in a mansion looking for treasure. That's about it. Each level requires some thinking to navigate as you collect all the coins. Collect all the coins and you're instantly transported to the next room. Pickaxes can sometimes be found, and for each one you collect, you'll be able to break 1 block of bricks right below you. Sometimes it'll help you get to another area, but sometimes it's necessary to collect coins that may be hidden inside of these bricks. The game is really about figuring out how to navigate the rooms that are filled with ladders you can climb, beams you can walk on or fall through, platforms that will disappear as you walk over them, switches that will create bridges, bombs that can be detonated to clear blocks, and one-way arrows that will pass you from the bottom of the screen back up to the top of the screen. There's a lot of elements to take into consideration, and you don't have to worry about fall damage. But you will have to restart the level if your character falls into flames or comes into contact with one of the 2 types of enemies roaming the levels. There are these guys that kind of look like you and will navigate the level like you do, and they will chase you down if they see you. And then there are the ghosts that'll float around the level in a predetermined path. The game controls very well and it keeps things simple. There's no jump button, and in effect the only time you would hit a button is for using the pickaxe or restarting the level if you get stuck. The music is great, and I like the character designs in this game. You're just a cube-like guy with a black outline, and the enemies are pretty much the same except with a red outline, so you know they're bad. There are certain elements of this game that actually remind me a little of Lode Runner, just a little bit though. And like Lode Runner, this game will have you thinking on your feet at all times. The game does only have 30 levels, which I was able to clear in about 60 to 90 minutes, but I liked the game so much I might have considered giving it a 5 and calling it great anyway. There's a huge problem though. As I was playing my way through the game and I got to level 25, I got stuck. I couldn't figure out how to collect 2 of the coins on the level. I kept thinking, what am I missing? And I eventually gave up and took to the internet to see if I could find a solution to that level. The solution? Put in a password to skip to level 26 because the version of Yazzie that's on this collection has an error in the level design, making it impossible to complete. Now that's kind of ridiculous. It kind of ruins the game a bit in my mind, so I'm going to give this a 3 and call it okay. I still had fun, so I can't put it into the I didn't like it category, but the fact there's a version of the game with this level fixed, and it's not the version here in this collection, cancels out the fun that I was having. It may be possible that Blaze would patch this game with a firmware update, and if that happens, I'll change my score, but as of right now, a 3 it is. Alright, that's all 8 games in MegaCat Studios collection number 2. What I have here is a list of all 8 games I've ranked, and my least favorite out of the list is Yazzie. I did give this one an okay score, but it could have gotten a higher score if one of the levels wasn't glitched and I could actually play through the whole game. So that kind of ruined the whole thing, and I had to put this lowest on the list. If they do fix it in the future, I will change the score. I will. At number 7, I've got Romeow and Julicat, an interesting puzzle game, but I really do feel that it needs tweaks to make the game a little bit more fun. Number 6, I put Gluf. Again, a lot of these games coming up here, they're really so close together. You know, some of them very close together, but I just put Gluf at the bottom just because of the issue where sometimes you'll jump and not knowing there's a creature there just off screen. No, number 6. Number 5, Misplaced, a game that, again, another puzzle game that I thought was really good and just really short. Number 4, Alter Ego. And even though this one's above the other ones, this is the shortest of them all. Beat the game in less than half an hour. Again, all puzzle games. I enjoyed them all. I just wish they were all longer. Number 3, in our number 3 spot, we've got Devwill Too. And platformer I thought was really interesting with the sliding and bouncing mechanic. Really interesting. In the number 2 spot, I've got Roniu's Tale. Placed second, even though the game's not completed yet. But there's a lot of the game there. I imagine that when the game is finished, it'll still remain in the spot. And in the number 1 spot, I've got Arkagis Revolution, the action shooter, top-down shooter where you could rotate the stages, and really good effects for what is on the Genesis. So yeah, really liked the game, played all the way through it, and I had a good time, and I could easily see doing it again. A lot of options in the game. So yeah, no doubt had to be in my number 1 spot. And that's gonna wrap it up for the Megacat Studios Collection 2. Coming up next is going to be really interesting because we're going to get 6 collections all at the same time. But not till December at the earliest. They were originally slated for November 3rd, but then got pushed back all the way to December. And who knows if they may even get pushed back again. But the order I believe I'm going to do the next few cartridges, and we're going to do the Intellivision Collection 1, then we're going to do Bitmap Brothers Collection 1, then we'll get into the arcade stuff with Technos Arcade 1, Data East Arcade 1, Galco Arcade 1, and then finally Atari Arcade 1. So there's going to be a lot to do all at once, but not until December at the earliest. So we're going to get quite a break from Evercade stuff on this channel for quite a while. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.